Welcome to the Family Geekery Podcast, a podcast for geeks from a family of geeks. We talk about comic books and video games and anything else we deem geeky. I'm Chris.
And I'm Alicia.
And today we're going to be talking about Venom, the lethal protector, and basically Venom in general. But the first thing we need to address is who is this Alicia person here? So, Alicia is my wife. And usually if you listen to this podcast, you hear me and my two daughters talking, Amber and Danielle. But right now, we are on a little road trip, my wife and I, and we're kind of in a cabin out in the woods, and there's not a lot of service, so we didn't think we could get Amber and Danielle to dial in, so we're just doing a little podcast here by ourselves. So hopefully this works. If you're listening to it, then I guess it did. But Alicia, how are you doing?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're having a good time on this road trip. We're doing some geeky stuff, and the first thing we're going to talk about is what we call our geeky weeks. So with our geeky weeks, we talk about anything that we've done since the last episode that was geeky. And for us, I think since we've been on this little road trip, it's both kind of the same thing. What have we been doing?
Shopping for books and comic books?
That's right. So we are kind of on a road trip in the Shenandoah Mountains and hitting a couple small towns and checking out their bookstores and their comic book stores, and sometimes they're both the same. But we've hit some pretty neat stores, found some little hidden treasures here and there, had some good food along the way. And besides that, you playing any video games recently?
I played the same games I always play. Disney Magic Kingdoms and Dreamlight Valley. It's the only video games I usually play.
Well, you don't have to be bashful about video games of any genre. They just happen to both be Disney games. That's perfect for this podcast. I play both of those games myself. But also because we've been on this little road trip with limited Wi-Fi, I've been playing on my Steam Deck a lot of Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, which luckily doesn't need any kind of Wi-Fi or anything. I've just been playing that and having a good time with that. We've talked about that on the podcast before. But that's about it for our Geeky Weeks. So let's get right into our topic of this week. So why are we talking about Venom?
He's my favorite character in Marvel.
Right. So Alicia is married into a geeky partnership with me and has thankfully picked up some of the hobbies along the way. So in this case, she just happens to love Venom. And what makes you like Venom? What do you like about Venom?
Well, I never read any comic books. It was just the movies got me excited about him because he's funny and it's a different superhero than you usually see.
Yeah, so that was actually, you spoiled one of my questions for you, one of my interview questions, and that was, how many comic books have you read previous to today?
Just 2 today.
Just 2 today. So that's the ones we're going to be talking about. But you have seen the movies, of course, with what's the dude's name?
Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, yeah. Good
movies. I like the first one a lot. The second one could have been a little bit better, but in the course of watching a couple different movies with Venom represented in it, the first Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire had, I think it was Spider-Man 3, I think, brought in Venom. And then watching the Venom movies from the Sonyverse, and then reading comics, it gets a little confusing over the years of like what the story is and stuff. But in this case, we're going to be talking about a couple comics that we read, and that's the Lethal Protector series, which is a 6-issue miniseries from 1993. And I picked this one for us to read because in this one, he's kind of in that same role as the Venom movie, the recent Venom movies, where he's in California, in this case, instead of New York, and he's kind of playing the role of a good guy, a good guy that has his moments of still wanting to kill and eat people, but he's overall trying to be, somewhat of a hero or protector and trying to rewrite his history in this case. So we read these 2 comics without getting too deep into the subject matter. Just in general, Alicia, what do you think? Did you like them, or were the story good? What do you think?
Yeah, I like the stories. I've never read a comic, and it was interesting. To me, it reads like a miniseries where it just continues to the next one and like leaves it in a cliffhanger a little bit. And I feel like Venom's misunderstood, but that's just me.
Yeah, so definitely you can't ever just read one of these. Like if you read the first issue of something, you're not going to get a whole lot of story. You're going to get a little backstory, a little setup, and then it's going to leave you hanging. So that's why on a series like this, we didn't have to time to read all 6, but you have to at least read 2 so you can at least see where that story's going past the first little cliffhanger. And it brought us into a pretty good place with this particular series where he's, like I said, he's in San Francisco. This is obviously past all the original battling with Spider-Man. We know, from the comics that Spider-Man brought that black suit back after the Secret Wars, and that's a storyline that I hope that the MCU brings in, the Secret Wars. That would be kind of cool. But he brings back that black suit. He kind of wears it for a little bit, and then all of a sudden that black suit, which is actually an alien symbiote, starts taking other hosts. And everybody's favorite host, of course, is Eddie Brock. So Eddie Brock wears that suit for a while, does some wacky things, misunderstands Spider-Man's intentions, and decides that Spider-Man is his number one enemy. So they have their battles in New York, and that goes on for several years. But this story brings us a couple of years later into San Francisco, which is Eddie Brock's hometown, and that gets a little explored in this in these issues. So it's kind of funny. This story starts right off with him landing in San Francisco, and he sees a bad guy trying to steal some money from a lady, and he saves her. I don't know if you read it this way, but it sounded like he might have killed the dude in the process.
That's what it sounded like to me.
And then in the process of saving the girl, he's like looking for a thank you, and she just gets scared by this big, scary looking monster type thing, and so she runs away screaming too. So he's kind of left there like thanking himself for this, and that's his introduction into being a good guy. But he's hanging out in San Francisco. He immediately gets recognized by some local cops, I guess, that think that it's Eddie Brock, who's wanted for murder. And that's something that's happened in between, the original storyline and here, I guess, while he was in prison. I think he killed somebody. I don't know the whole storyline on that, but that does get also kind of explored in this story. But so he's immediately on the run in San Francisco, trying to stay away from these cops. And in the meantime, from the cops and the media kind of picking up on him, we got Spider-Man in New York finding out, hey, that this Venom guy has showed up in San Francisco. So what does Spider-Man do?
Goes to find Venom.
Right. So they kind of, at this point, they have kind of a truce almost, because I guess Spider-Man had saved someone important to Eddie Brock. Who was that? His girlfriend or his wife or his
ex-wife?
Ex-wife, that's who it was. Michelle Williams, right?
Yeah. Well, from the movie, yeah.
So I guess in the process of saving her, he's kind of Spider-Man has kind of bought some good graces from Venom. So Spider-Man's kind of unsure. Should I go ahead and go after him because he may be doing some bad stuff, or should I just leave him alone and let this truce ride out and not upset him again and get him, get Spider-Man back on his list? But he decides to take a flight out to San Francisco and start hunting for the guy. Not a bad cameo. Whenever you're writing a comic and have a first issue, if you can get Spider-Man in there right away, it doesn't hurt, because right on the very front cover of the thing it says, special guest Spider-Man. So that's going to sell a couple copies. But we got Eddie Brock kind of going through the city trying to figure out if he can get a hotel or a room or something, which he immediately finds out he can't because he's getting chased by the cops. We get a little backstory, which they did in black and white, which was kind of neat to show that it's a backstory to kind of explain their relationship.
I like that part. No, it made it easier to understand.
Yeah, because it's been a couple of years since that stuff happened. So, in the comics world. So it's good to have kind of a refresher. And in the process of, trying to find his way around this new city, he ends up, in like a tunnel or something?
It said it was underground, like under San Francisco or something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
So some underground, there's some people that they think are homeless, and I guess...
They called them a militia, I think, or something.
Yeah, we're gonna see that it is truly like a militia thing happening. But I think like these big robot things are coming to clean out that area, and we don't know why yet. But these big robots are coming to clean out that underground, and Venom is there to save these people who I think he just thought were homeless people under there. And in the process of fighting these big robots, they end up in some foreign-looking land, which they kind of recognize as like the past. So they think that they went back in time somehow.
Yeah, that was a little confusing for someone who hasn't really read comics before.
And that's kind of how it leaves us. So when I was reading this, it was like a no-brainer. Yep, I need to get that next issue out, which is easy when you're reading it on Marvel Unlimited. You can just click on the next issue. I imagine if you were reading this back in 1993, you're waiting a whole month for that next issue to come out. So it leaves us on this, hey, what just happened? Did they actually go back in time? Because it definitely looks like an old city. People are dressed up in old garb. So that's where we're at.
I enjoyed it for my first comic book.
Yeah, now you can always remember what your first comic book you ever read was. So we jump into issue 2, and as you look at the cover of issue 2, do you recognize that cover?
No. From the movie?
No, you actually bought me like a wall, like painting, not painting, but one of those little wall boards that had this cover on it, and it used to hang up in the living room.
Oh, okay.
Before I got my own dedicated dungeon for that kind of stuff, but it hung in the living room for a long time. But yeah, so it's Lethal Protector issue 2, which I always thought was weird that they picked issue number 2 for this particular, wall decoration. But it is a cool cover with Venom kind of crawling the walls and got his mouth wide open and some goop sticking out of it. But we got that cliffhanger that needs to be resolved is what's happening. Like, why did this robot, when they started fighting him, did they end up going back in time? And we find out pretty quickly they didn't go back in time. But they get into a little battle. Venom makes short work of these robots. He just tears them up, and he's having a good time doing that. Did you like the verbiage that Venom is saying, like his lines, like how he talks as Venom?
Yeah, he's funny. I always found him funny. I like when he said, "Oh, I have one for each hand now," because he was fighting 2 robots.
Right. Yeah, he was looking forward to the challenge. But he's always talking in the we,
right,
like the third person, and sometimes he catches himself when he's Eddie Brock because he still talks in kind of the third person, but he brings it back to I or me. But he's definitely having a good time fighting these robots. Tears them up, and then finally gets to talking to these people who he assumes that he's saving, and they find out, which was kind of confusing because I thought they were homeless people, but it turns out that they actually live down there, and some of them, I guess this militia, is kind of in between the 2 worlds to try to protect people from getting into this underground world. So they've got, I guess after the earthquake of 1903 or something, some San Francisco earthquake, part of the city just stays underground and never evolves into modern times, and they just keep it that way, so it's very peaceful.
And they have to vote you in there. Like, they voted Eddie Brock out. They didn't want him there or something. So they have a panel of voters or something.
Yeah, they have some kind of a council that that determines who gets to stay and who has to leave. They have that militia that's protecting, I guess, maybe the gateway between the 2 worlds, between modern times and between their little underground city. And he's kind of upset at first that he was just trying to save them, but he understands that they actually took a vote, and I guess the religious figure just assumed that he's a demon of some sort. And I thought it was cool that whoever the judge was, or the main guy, the main councilman dude, I thought it was cool that he said, "Hey, we understand that you're like super strong and stuff, and you wouldn't have to leave if you didn't want to, but maybe you could please go peacefully." And Eddie Brock, or Venom, they decide that they do. Now, when they leave, they figure out that they want to find out who these big robots are, and they assume that these big robots are trying to, attack this underground place. So he figures if he can find out who the big robot people are, or who's sending them down there, then he can, stop that from happening, and then he'll be a hero again, and then he can go back down there and live with them, because he's just really looking for a sanctuary. He's just looking for a place that he can fit in, and that's kind of the whole premise of this series, is looking for a place to fit in for him. And he figures that this place would be the best, his best chance, because nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows that he's wanted for murder. I guess they don't have the internet, and they don't have the nightly news down there. Well, I guess nobody had much internet back in 1993, but they don't have the nightly news down there, so they don't know that this Eddie Brock character is wanted for murder. So he figures,
still confused about that part.
Right. He figures, let's find out who's behind these robots, take that dude out, and then he can go back, and they'll surely see that he is a good guy, not just a bad guy that's doing good things to get down there.
So does Venom totally control Eddie Brock, or is it?
It looks like they have kind of mutual control. It doesn't look. It looks like he can get back to his Eddie Brock point anytime he needs to. Which, did you notice the clothes that he wears when he's Eddie Brock? They have little Venom like icons all over them.
No.
Like he's got like a shirt with like some Venom, the little spider design on his lapels and stuff. And he had, at one point when he was pretending to be a cop, his cop hat had the Venom symbol on the front instead of like a shield for a cop. So I thought that's kind of cool that you can always pick him out. Now, what do you think? Let's take a little side path here real quick. What do you think about his depiction in the comics, at least visibly?
How he looks, or?
Yeah, as Eddie Brock.
Oh, versus the movie?
Yeah.
It's very different. He's like 4 times the size of a normal person, but.
And he's also like a typical 1990s mullet man.
Right.
He doesn't look anything like the actor that portrays him in the movies, but
no.
He's got blonde hair, very mullet looking. He'd look like any one of the bad guys that you would think was being a bad guy in the city. He actually looks very much like the first bad guy that he runs into. So it sets him on the path of finding, what was the guy's name? Treese?
Yeah, right.
Mr. Treese.
That's the bad guys. He's controlling the robots or whatever.
Yeah, so he finds his, office building, which happens to be a huge tower in San Francisco, and infiltrates that and sees like a model of the park that's over the city, the underground city. So he knows, yep, he's got something going on here. And the guards for this big tower come in, shoot him up, and try to kill him, and quickly figure out that they're not going to kill him with bullets. So Venom escapes to fight that battle another day after taking out a dozen or so guards in that tower. And at the same time this is happening, Spider-Man's still trying to figure out where Eddie Brock is.
And he's contacting Eddie Brock's father for some reason.
Yeah, he figures that would be the best place to look, is if he's got family here, maybe he's going to reach out to the family, but he finds out quite quickly that Mr. Brock wants nothing to do with his son and slams the door in his face. But Spider-Man doesn't take know for an answer, and he goes back and visits him later. So later in the series and the rest of the series, you're going to get some backstory into Eddie Brock's childhood and possibly why his father doesn't want anything to do with him right now. Maybe he's just misunderstood to his father too.
Where was Eddie Brock first in the comics? In Spider-Man, or?
Yeah, I think he started off in the Spider-Man series in New York as a reporter. I think they were like rival reporters, him and Peter Parker. But yeah, so we got kind of the two stories going on. The Spider-Man trying to figure out where Eddie Brock is. We got Eddie Brock / Venom trying to figure out who this bad guy is and what his intentions are so he can stop him. And then all of a sudden, for the cliffhanger of issue 2, we get General Orwell Taylor pop up out of nowhere. And he's got a bunch of armored dudes with him and he's very upset that Venom has killed his son. So this is a guy that I had to look up because I hadn't heard that name before, and obviously I knew you hadn't. So I got a little backstory on General Orwell Taylor.
So that's who Eddie Brock killed?
So yeah, so he killed his son. His son was in the prison. So his son was a prison guard at this high security prison where Venom was, or Eddie Brock was, and he ended up killing him. And his father, as part of revenge, has contacted a bunch of his old friends, plus his other son, and some of the old guards from that same prison. And he stole some plans on how to build armored suits from Spider-Man, or from Iron Man.
What?
And he made all these iron suits. And that's who we see there is these people that they call, the jury. So the jury is his little team of armored dudes that their whole mission is to kill Venom. Now, spoiler alert, they try a couple times in the comics and fail each time. And he doesn't have a very long biography in the Marvel Wikipedia. So it told you pretty much what I said. He had 2 sons. One got killed. The other one became a robot dude with his friends. And they try to kill Venom, and they never do.
Well, does he hate Venom, or does he hate Eddie Brock? Or does he think they're the same person?
I think that everybody knows they're the same person, I think. So that's the cliffhanger on issue 2. And now not only is he got the cops looking after him, he's got Spider-Man looking for him, now he's got this other random dude looking for him. And his day is not just getting any easier, is it?
No.
So, you liked these 2 issues?
Yes.
Are you going to finish reading the rest of the last 4?
Yeah, I think I will. They were interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to read through these, maybe on the rest of our road trip here.
I'm looking forward to Venom 3. Hopefully Spider-Man's in that, but I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, hopefully it's better than Venom 2.
Yeah, Venom 2 wasn't good.
I had so much hope for Venom 2 because they brought Carnage, and Carnage is one of the coolest characters in comics, and they just did a bad job.
It was rushed, probably.
Yeah, they were probably trying to get a quick money grab. But yeah, so I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Any other last thoughts, Alicia?
I do have one question. Who's the artist that does Venom? Does he do a lot of famous characters, do you know?
So this artist for this series was Mark Bagley, and I didn't recognize that name. I'm sure he's done a lot of things, but I just didn't recognize that. This is towards the end. 1993 would have been towards the end of my what I consider childhood reading before, going off to college and stuff, and dropping out of comics for a little bit. So I didn't recognize the name, but I like his style for sure.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Alicia, for joining us on this, your first episode after 100 something episodes.
I
We finally
enjoyed
got
it.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good to finally get the full family into Family Geekery. But go ahead and check out our socials, check out the YouTube channel, see what's going on there. Let us know what your favorite Venom series is, because there's been a lot of little mini series over the years. If you have a favorite one, go ahead and write us podcast@familygeekery.com. We'd love to hear your recommendations. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. We thank you as always for listening. And until next time, peace
out and geek out.
You got it.
How'd I do?
Thank you for listening to the Family Geekery podcast. For more information, visit www.familygeekery.com. Don't forget to subscribe at your favorite podcast provider. And until next time, peace out and geek out.